You may have heard of protected beliefs or a protected belief, but what exactly does that mean and what's the significance? I thought I'd do a little sort of introduction, sort of primer. So where's the start? Under the Equality Act, and it is equality singular, I mean the press often do it as Equalities Act, um, you cannot be discriminated on the basis of a belief you hold. Um, what do we mean by discrimination? Well, that can be direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, harassment, subjecting you to a detriment, treating you less favourably because of that belief. But it's not a free for all. It's not a free for all. There can be limits on that. Say, for instance, indirect discrimination. I mean, it would be illegal to say the fire service to say no Sikhs. However, they say no beards, and that obviously affects Sikhs disproportionately because their religious requirement to grow a beard. But the justification is that, well, no, you need to be clean shaven for the respirators. So that means it's not unlawful. Direct discrimination is always unlawful. Indirect discrimination is unlawful unless you can show there's a good reason for the indirect discrimination. And that there's no reasonable adjustment that can be made. I mean, just to give you an example, veganism is a protected belief. If somebody worked, got a warehouse job, they said, well, you need to wear these safety boots, and we've only got leather ones. If it's a big company, they might say, well, no, actually, if you're a massive company, you can get some, alternative non-leather ones. But if it's, if a vegan applies for a job at a restaurant and they say, you will be required to cook meat, well, I'm not going to do that. Well, look, mate, this is a steakhouse. Then that might not be a reasonable adjustment to say we're not going to change our entire business model just to accommodate you. It could be, well, we're big enough that you can just cook the vegetables. These are the sorts of things. Also, well, you've generally got an absolute right to hold the belief and usually to express the belief. That is to say, look, this is what I believe. In terms of what we call manifesting the belief, there may be limits. So say, for instance, you go, in my heart, I am a big fan of Cthulhu. And you can tell everybody, hey, Cthulhu's great, he's fantastic. And you say, and as a result, I will need some of you to volunteer for human sacrifice. They might say, well, hang on a minute. First two are fine, but we have to draw the line somewhere. So we're going to put a limit on how you manifest that belief. So how do we determine what is a protected belief? Well, luckily we have a test. It's called the Granger test after a particular case. And there are 5 limbs to it, although sometimes these are broken down differently. But they are, the belief must be genuinely held. In other words, you actually have to, believe it. It can't simply be an opinion or a viewpoint based on the present state of information available. In other words, it can't be a belief you've arrived at rationally. It has to be something you sort of just fundamentally, believe innately. This is how I live my life. This is how I set the parameters of my behaviour. Although interestingly, there are some beliefs that I think actually do fall within that. So, for instance, creationism is a protected belief because it's just like I either believe it on a religious basis or I just feel that's how the world is. But a belief in Darwinian evolution is also a protected belief. But if you ask somebody who believed that, they would say, well, I've arrived at this position by considering the evidence and looking at the science and the facts. So, but there you go. The belief must concern a weighty and substantial aspect of human life and behaviour. So, you might genuinely believe Wings is a better band than the Beatles, but it might not be considered, important enough. A particular football team you might be a fan of very passionately. That wouldn't necessarily be a protected belief. You could still be discriminated against it on the basis of that, and that you might have a cause of action, but it wouldn't be under this heading. The belief must attain a certain level of cogency, seriousness, cohesion, and importance. In other words, you've got to actually know what the belief is and be able to set out at least roughly what the parameters are and what you actually believe. And finally, and this is the important one, the belief must be worthy of respect in a democratic society, not be incompatible with human dignity, and not be in conflict with fundamental rights of others. So racism is not a protected belief because it's not worthy of respect. Okay. So there you go. As always, the devil is in the detail. Spend a lot of time arguing about that fifth limb. The worthy of respect in a democratic society, and also about where you draw the line in terms of what you can believe, what you can say about what you believe, and what you can how you manifest your beliefs. But if you're watching the news now and you see this crop up, hopefully now you'll be able to say, I see now what they're arguing. They're either arguing like it doesn't fall within the limb, or they're arguing there should be a restriction on the way the belief is manifested, or yes, that was discrimination, but it was only indirect discrimination, and I can see how they can justify that. I mean, it all can depend on your employment. You might have less sort of free speech rights to express your belief in certain jobs than in others, if you're customer facing, or you're the face of an organization. But you can't necessarily use what your clients might think as a way around this. I mean, to give an example, there's a guy, he was a hunt sap, and he worked for a business out in the States, and lots of people were boycotting the business because these are all country folks. So he got sacked, but he went to the employment tribunal and said, my protected belief is the sanctity of animal life. And they said, well, yeah, that certainly ticks all the boxes. And it can't be, the business can't get around it by saying, yeah, but what about my customers? Because they say, yeah, but what if basically somebody had a load of racist customers, or, were boycotting a shop because of one of your employees' religion or something like that, So that's why that was held to be that. Because a lot of people say that's a strange decision. But no, because it's the wider impact. If you say, yeah, you can sack people because of what your clients think, even if they, do fit within a protected category, or you're sacking them for a protected belief, well, yeah, it'd be pretty much a free-for-all, really, to sack anybody, wouldn't it? But there you go. If you found that useful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and sharing. And like I say, if you want more detail about this or anything specific, just let us know in the comments.